I knew that this was going to be an emotional moment, which is why I decided not to prepare any remarks. And of course, Lee Rhodes, Lassie baby, I love you. You're a wonderful woman. Thank you for what you do. So, friends, it's exquisite to be able to be with you 30 years after we came up with this brainstorm in the Tabard Inn in Washington, D.C., not expecting this kind of a journey and not having any idea where that effort was going to lead to. So it's hard for me to describe the path that we took. I do remember train wrecks on the way from Cusco to Machu Picchu. I remember capsizing vessels, airplane crashes, lots of adventures along the way. But most importantly, what I remember and think of every day are the people that came together. The people that came together and shared a vision. And some were outside of the team at CI, the staff, some were from the board, many were in the organization itself. And I always was amazed at how each person has taken a different path and arrived at this place where we can work together to turn the tide, to address the most important issue that we all face, which is how do we help that community of people? How do we help every family? And the common pixel of this earth is a family, is a community. And it's on every continent, on every island, and the common drive is how do we make life better for my children? And what we realized along our journey as we focused on the protection of biological diversity was that nature was actually going to survive humanity. The question was, would humanity survive? And how could we actually break through this insane argument about is it jobs or the environment? I mean, how do we actually take that kind of a ridiculous conflict and say, are you going to choose your right arm or your left arm, or your heart or your lungs? How do we actually get all of us to understand that we don't exist without this environment? Our children don't grow and flourish and breathe and laugh without good soil and clean air and all those organisms that surround us, that inspire us, whether it's a bird or a butterfly or a fish. And how do we actually learn to communicate to people that don't hear what we're saying? You know, perhaps we have to learn that what we say is not as important as what others hear, and perhaps we have to learn how they listen, what's important to them, so we can communicate in a way that makes all of us know that there is no other place to go to. And that really has been the shared culture, value, vision of this group of people. And it's not just the staff, it's not the board, it's all of you. We are at a time in our history when we need to double down. We're at a time in our history when we need to acknowledge and recognize that those of us who wait for the government to do what has to be done are waiting for Godot. We are waiting for things that may not happen. In other words, we need transformations that do not require government permission. We need to take actions and have aspirations, and we need to figure out how do we bring everybody along, but we do not have the luxury of delay. I listened to President Clinton, as all of you did, and I too was not surprised by the decisions that were made. I was dismayed by them. I was angered by them. I believe that we have the obligation to not feel as if we're victims. We have the obligation to be active, to make choices. You know, it's interesting, the president also spoke about choice, and that resonates with me because whenever I make the wrong choice, my wife says to me, life is filled with choices. And I know that what she's basically saying is, how could you make such a stupid decision? And so I think that we all have this opportunity today to make smart choices. One of the most important choices that CI made about a decade ago was we made the decision to change our mission from protecting biodiversity to supporting human well-being. And the reason we made that choice was that we knew that despite the 1.5 billion acres that are protected, extinction rates have accelerated, global fisheries are collapsing, and the climate's completely bizarre. And the only force that can change that is the force of development, that inspiration that every community has to develop. Yet somehow the development strategies of nations left out the environment. And so we decided to transform our efforts away from just putting aside protected areas to changing the paradigm of development. And the good news was when we made that choice to switch from protecting biodiversity to supporting humanity and human well-being by protecting nature, we made the decision to make our tent enormous, which means every company, every government, every community is invited in. They might not know they're in our tent, but they're in our tent. And we began an effort to figure out, how do we communicate that it is in the enlightened self-interest of every human being and every business to secure their supply chain, to take care of their employees, to think about their customers, to protect this planet. And how do you measure that? And how do you use science? And why is it good business? And we made those arguments. And we made a decision that we needed to work with organizations that were not involved in the environmental movement. We needed to reach out to the evangelicals and talk not about biodiversity, but about creation. And we need to talk to major companies about supply chains. And we had to talk to foundations that were concerned with poverty about the fact that nature is the treasury of the poor. And we had to be practical. And we had to allow for everyone to feel success. And when you make any progress, it's contagious. It turns us on. And that's what we need to be focusing on: progress, movement. So this past 30 years has been a remarkable experience for all of the people at CI. It's been an amazing journey, personal journey for me. As Andre Santo Domingo and Rob Walton both mentioned, last night we came back from Guyana. In the beginning of the week, we were with President Santos in Colombia, who won the Nobel Prize for bringing peace to his country. And his focus going forward as his term ends is this connection between peace and environment. And he will be a great partner of ours. And then we flew to Guyana. Guyana is a country that is entirely forested except for the coastline. Guyana in the south borders the Brazilian Amazon. But instead of the waters flowing out into the Atlantic, they flow north into the Caribbean. Most of the lands in the center and the southern part of Guyana are controlled and owned by indigenous peoples. And that's where we went, to visit with communities, to talk to young people, to speak with elders, to listen to communities that understand a basic truth. They believe, and I share the belief, that we belong to the earth. We do not have dominion over her. And there was one young girl, her name was May Alakat, who got up before us and started dancing. And she danced and she recited a poem. Her poetry was about the Rupununi, the place where she lived. And her message was that nature, whether it's the giant river otter, whether it's the harpy eagle, whether it's the big trees, that was what their life was about. And that gold and minerals were all essential. But how we take them out of the earth must be done in a sensible and thoughtful way so that we don't undercut or destroy what all of these people need. When she finished, I asked somebody, who wrote that poem? And the chief said, that's my niece. She wrote that poem. She's 15 years old. She needs to be heard. And that message that we have seen from children all over the world needs to be heard. Because the simple truth is that we as elders have a responsibility to hand this place off to our young people in a way that allows them to cherish, care for, and steward the earth in a wise way. So I've been asked many, many times over 30 years, tell me what you're proud about. You must be so proud about Conservation International. And I have always said, who has time to be proud? We haven't succeeded. We've got work to do. We're making progress, but every once in a while, as with yesterday, there's a step backwards. We can't stop. But the one thing I feel extraordinary pride about is a team of people that I've learned to work with at Conservation International. It's this new team of leaders. It's their youth and their energy and their wisdom, but most importantly, it's their vision and their aspiration that they can achieve what needs to be achieved. It's the fact that millennials know no boundaries, that we have a social media capacity that shines a light on those that do the wrong thing. This is a really important moment that all of us need to understand. It's a moment of transformation. It's a moment of big choices. Now, most of us focus on climate change from the perspective of renewable energy. Renewable energy is an essential strategy, for sure. But do not forget that nature is 30% of the solution. It's those forests, it's that ocean, it's that biological diversity that allows us to have the resilience to survive. So we at CI have and will focus on how do we secure nature for all of humanity. That's why you're here. And I just want to thank you for being together with each other, with me, with your children, on a journey that is joyous and fulfilling and has the opportunity to transform this world no matter what any individual politician says or does. And that's the message. The message is transformation that does not need permission. That's your obligation. That's my obligation. That's what we continue to do. I am honored, joyful, fortunate to be able to have a family that's been with me on this trip. And I'm blessed to have had friends that have gone with me to wild places, been charged by rhinos, been scared by sharks, climbed trees, dodged arrows, and continued. That's what we have to do. We have to be strong and excited and hopeful, because with that, we will win this. Our children and our grandchildren will thank us. Thank you all so much. Thank you.